Okay, we've had a request. Somebody wanted to know what chores I do in a day, and they vary from day to day. But today, we've got this grain bin. It's the Butler grain bin. And right where there is an opening in the roof section for your auger to go in, it always drips there, and it drips down on the ground on whatever grain is here, and all the grain in this area rots. All right, Trey, will you hand me that shovel? I got one helper today, and we're having to do this, number one, by hand. If the roof wasn't leaking, you should be able to shovel this right out with like a grain shovel. But we had another area over there that the same thing happened, and I don't know why it did it in that section. Whew. But the smell is horrific. It smells like dog crap. It's terrible. But this side here, where the grain was, it really packed on that one side, and I was able to get almost everything out of here and use it. So we're cleaning out everything that was left over around the side. It's not a terrible amount of waste. It's just the labor and, you know, having to clean it out to get it ready for grain storage for whatever is going to come in here next. This year we were working on harvesting our rye, and we put it right into a hopper trailer that gets pulled behind a semi because this wasn't prepped and ready to go out, so that could get transferred to this. But you can see up in here all this streaking. The water is coming in where the screws are that hold that all together. In every section there's just condensation, and like absolutely rain doesn't come in, so we're gonna have to tar those on the outside or get a gasket that goes around the screw heads. So this is today's job, one of today's jobs. So I'm spreading the field by hand because the manure spreader can't quite get to this bin very well, which has been the holdup for getting this job done in the first place. It's not a fun job, but I got Trey to talk to, and that helps. And we figure it'll be about 8 wheelbarrows full, maybe. We're not filling it up very full because of the weight of it. Because again, most of the beans are wet, not dry. So this time of year, if I have to get to the hayfield, I have to cross our creek. And I didn't want to get my feet all wet, and I didn't want to wear my mud boots because it's 80 degrees out. All right, that field's all turned up right. He's got it half done as far as cutting it. Got the first load back there. The sky's gotten really cloudy all of a sudden. So I'm gonna get my bike back after doing that job. He's just about got a full load, and I gotta go check on some bees for the next part of my job. Usually when I start a job, I try to do it from beginning to end, and occasionally the jobs get carried over to another day. I started this job after our lunch, and the smell just makes you sick to your stomach. So I didn't want to complete it today. It's been real breezy, so I'm leaving the door open overnight. He's got this black corrugated drain tile all joined together up here, and this first one is absolute wet slime, so I did not want to grab a hold of that. I'm going to let that dry out before I pull these out to finish cleaning that area where it was so wet. They were all coming in from a back section back here, and I've got all this goldenrod, poison ivy, and grapevines growing, and it's all rooted right in here. So that's as far as I'm going to go with that. We've already taken the fan out and parked it inside because we're not using it. And I didn't want the mice to get into it, so it got put into storage. But it's cleaned up pretty good. You can see the wet spots need to dry up. Pigs are all getting their breakfast this morning. Today they are getting straight rye. Georgie's helping with the buckets. The pigs. These are the two gilts that have not had babies yet. They are 3 years old now, and they actually just got bred. We weren't going to do any breeding. We had pretty much decided we were just going to butcher them ourselves this fall. However, we had a little trouble with our Tractor Supply gate. This is a county line gate, and it has a hog panel on the front. Well, I'll tell ya, this one, when we loaded a pig this winter, I kind of smashed up the bottom of it trying to get it open because I was hitting it with the shovel trying to free it up from the snow. So we had noticed that the gilt had been in heat and our boar was in this next pen over. So the boar kind of started rubbing on the gate a little more, and we were starting to see damage like in the fence line there. And we don't have electric on this. This is like 6 to 8 times the size of their pens in the barn, and they had plenty of room for moving around. But right about that time, somehow or another, they were able to bend that upper panel, and I would guess that the boar is probably in the 500-pound range, and the girls are easily in the 300s. So this is Willow, and she has been here with us for a couple of years, and it is time for the pigs to be done for the winter. They like a nice wet pen, don't ya? And as you can see, my water is full. So I fill them up with a hose. In the winter, I have to do it with a 5-gallon bucket. Bringing the water up here in the snow is kind of rough because we get so much wind and snowdrift from the field across the road and up the driveway that faucet right there on the corner side of the house, right there, usually freezes up just from the west wind, even with an insulated cover. So here's a little tail shot of Willow. Now, I have heard that you can determine if a pig is bred or pregnant depending on how things look from behind. This is the pair, our breeding pair, and we were pretty well thinking that their breeding days were about done. Now, I've heard of pigs being kept and bred for, 7 to 13 years. They should still have a couple years left in them. But since we didn't get any spring piglets this year, we figured they were about done. Well, it turns out he seemed to be a bit super focused on these two. So let's see what's going on behind them. Now, this girl here, she was always on the little bit smaller side until we got rid of her sister. There was less competition for food with only 2 of them here, but she was far from being the runt. She was just a little more bullied. So these 2 are sisters, and as you can see, she has signs of being bred. She's got a little wound on her backside from the boar getting her with either his foot, hoof, or his tusks. And she had another mark that's pretty well healed up, so we've kind of watched her to make sure that she's not having any swelling or infection. But if I can get this here, stand sideways for me. Yeah, going off into the dark. So on the breeding sow, you could kind of see that from her rear end, basically everything is pointing straight out, and on these girls it's tending to look like it's pointing upwards. So whether it's true or not, I mean, this information comes from the internet, I don't know, we're gonna have to test it and see here. So everything here is pointing north on this one, which kind of surprises me because she's on the smaller side. They looked like they both had been bred the same day, which doesn't mean that they were in heat together at the same time. But a lot of times when you have pigs together, it's just like having a bunch of women together in a house. They say your cycles start syncing, and whether or not it's true, I don't know. But this one looked like she had gotten bred a second time about a week and a half later. So if he was kind of getting confused or excited, he definitely went back and bred her again the second time. So it's looking like we are going to have some December to January babies. It's 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. Nice way of remembering that for you. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on them, making sure that they have good feed, and I'm going to be putting them on some supplements just to make sure that going into winter they have everything extra supplemental that they need. Now, if they are going to farrow and have babies, we've always let them farrow in the barn. So I've been cleaning out the manure from the old pig pens in there. I'm not a fan of having to clean out the pens, but they need to get done because if these girls are needing to be indoors in the wintertime, I've never done pigs births outside in the wintertime. Those little piglets are very small and very delicate, and even in the barn they can catch pneumonia and need a heat lamp. They need a nice dry draft-free bedding, and then they also need protection from their mother. So we've never done the farrowing crates. I actually have 4 farrowing crates on hand, and then we ended up not using them because we found that the Tamworths are very good mothers as far as not squishing them and laying down. Now, that being said, a lot of times with the first litter you might not have very many pigs. We have had, our low number has been 6 in the past, with the most being 14. And you definitely want to breed your pigs that have the most nipples, male and female, because that tells you how many they can feed. You want to make sure every little piglet is going to have a teat or an udder to get supplemented from. So I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on these. It's not worth the money to have a vet come out and pregnancy test them. In our area, there's not livestock vets around very locally or very readily, so it can be very expensive to get them come out. If you can find a student from the veterinarian college, Michigan State University is real close to us, that's always a possibility, but it just depends on whether or not they're interested in the livestock animals versus domestic pets. So it looks like I should probably be getting some straw out here for them today. It's real cloudy. There's a 20% chance of rain through the whole day and lots of clouds. So it's going to be dry for a couple of days. I don't like to give them too much bedding because we want to make sure they have that on reserve for winter time. But we definitely want to keep them comfortable and keep them dry. We'll keep you posted on the progress and what we end up finding out with these girls. So for today's chores, we're cleaning out livestock pens, old bedding in the barn, getting ready for winter. They've all been out on pasture all summer. Most of them even wintered outside last year. There really wasn't a need for pigs with lots of insulating fat on their bodies to come in here. It's a little easier for them, but we just keep an eye on them, make sure that everyone's healthy and strong, going into winter looking well and healthy. And the idea was that they were going to not live through last winter, that they were going to go in the freezer. Sometimes plans kind of change, and it looks like we might be having some baby pigs this winter, and I'd like to have them born in the barn for our convenience. So I'm going to work on this for a while. This is probably about 3 hours of shoveling to fill one load of the old manure spreader. And we've already started in with feeding the animals today. So I'll work on this, and you can go see the rest of the afternoon's chores as we get on with the day. I'll tell you, a great tool for cleaning out manure pens like this that have been packed down. We got this at an auction or somewhere, not really sure, but it is a bent tine pitchfork, and it's a 4-tine pitchfork, but I don't know if it was ever bought this way as a hay rake or not, but you could easily make one of these just by heating up the tines and bending them over. These are all equally bent, so they had to have been done in a vise, I'm guessing, but it is a super tool for cleaning out the pens. So it's morning, I'm working on my own now, and generally one of the boys will join me and make this a little faster work, but this pen drops down about 24 inches from the dry floor, where the manure spreader is parked. So I just make a pile up there and then transfer it into the manure spreader. That's where the second person really comes in handy, because they're loading it in the manure spreader as I'm getting it out of here. And as you can see, it's slow and steady work. Today's a nice cool morning, a little cloudy and rainy, so it's a great thing to do inside. Fall will be here in about 2 weeks, but the leaves are already starting to change and the morning is cool. And one thing I've learned about cleaning out these manure piles like this, you have to do a top layer at a time. Don't try to dig down to the bottom because it's all intermeshed, and you just have to peel it back one way or another. My son noticed that because the animals don't walk along the edges of the pen, this was a cow pen, it's not as compressed and compact around the edges. So we usually could get a lot of loose, already composted down material out around the sides. And you can see we've got an opening here where there used to be a window. Some siding has come off, and we started in on some reinforcing the rafters and the hayloft in this area to make sure that we've got plenty of support for our hayloft up above. So one of the chores that I do that is not a daily chore, I go around and I check the electric fence every couple of days. We have 3 bulls. The one bull we've probably had 7 years, maybe. He's very large. He's a good breeding bull, but he's not super tame, and we don't ever really trust him because of his size and his age. So we noticed that if we lose power for any reason, sometimes the extension cords get unplugged, or maybe there's a power outage, I always have to go around and check the fence. So we check it for staples, we check it for pushing out. I'll just show you down here at the bottom. They go along there, and our second wire is quite high. We could probably actually use a third wire down low, and they're nibbling on the grass. So they do the weed whacking and trimming for us, but we just have to make sure that the staples all the way down are holding very well, and that the conductors are in good shape and not shorting out or grounding out, because then you lose power to the rest of your fence. So if the power does go out, if the power does go out, they try to reach over or push out on the fence, and it is a huge job even just repairing one fence section, because they kind of push it down and they can snap the electric. Several of our cattle also are horned cattle, and we just don't like to alter the animals by docking their tails or removing their horns when they're young. So we leave everything. We do band the bulls occasionally when they're born here, but he has also gotten livestock at auctions. They are doing fence grooming. Their horns can get caught on the fence. Guy's ready for his nap here, so this is one of the last things I do before lunch. It's time for us to grab some food and maybe a little nap. Okay, this is the load of hay for the next 2 or 3 days that I had to move off of the dry floor so that I could start in on my next job, which is shoveling manure out of an old pen. We're gonna work on this with some barn lights and hopefully a yard light out here. Got some weird weather coming in and we're just not gonna rely on it to not rain. We've got a couple of big tarps, but they seem to always get blown off or you end up with a hole in the tarp. And I'll tell you, in a tight emergency, this big tarp here is a billboard tarp. And you can pick up a used billboard tarp. I believe it's 20 by 40, but I forget the exact measurements. And when they're too long for the job, you can still just cut them in half and just use a half of a billboard tarp. And they work excellent for covering these up. And they generally are very heavy duty and last for a while. So we've been pretty busy doing hay right now. And we ran out of ground grain. We normally have a mix of corn, beans, rye, and oats. So right now, they are getting a load of rye and oats mixed. I just opened up the bottom of that hopper bin on that trailer and let it fall down to a kiddie pool and take a couple 5-gallon buckets over and feed them that way. So you saw the one white cow, she kind of bosses the other one around, pushes her. So we have to kind of spread them out a bit. So I'm going to give them their hay now. This is their last feeding for the day. Could you turn on the water for me to fill up their waters? Kind of started out here on another project. Always have a knife in your pocket. Then you're not messing around trying to find one. And we always have backups because we lose them out of shallow pockets. And I've tried the clip on the back and had them clipped, and I've lost them that way faster than I've ever lost them before. So that's not good. So I took a minute and checked the sky out and pulled up the radar. Got a weather app on my phone to see kind of what was going on, and we're looking at a 20, 30, and 40% chance of rain over the next 3 hours. And the sky is black and dark blue just off to the north. So since the sky is black and dark blue just off to the north, it's usually not so bad. They're getting some weather, and they're getting some severe weather. So we're right kind of on the edge far enough that, you know, I would say a 20% chance is probably pretty safe. But looking to the south of us, did I accidentally say north, south? Okay, to the north it's bad. To the south of us it's looking decent. We're always right on the line of the weather around here. And if I make you dizzy, I'm sorry. These girl cows push each other around. I want to make sure that everybody gets enough food. So, this is about it for this chore day. I'm going to plug in some lights so we can put some hay up into the loft and get some tarps around and get these waters filled up for the night. Normally, we'd be wrapping it up to make dinner around this time. We are having tacos for dinner tonight. The outside jobs are just a portion of my day, and we've got plenty of inside jobs to do. So I usually spend my morning with the kids and doing any kind of housework. We generally break for lunch anywhere between noon and 3. It's never set in stone. We just get done what we can. Today it was 80 degrees. It was hotter than heck. So we tried to do as much indoor work during those early afternoon hours as we could. And that bin project wore my back right out. If you saw me flinging that, you could tell I just didn't have the muster in me. I had those hot jeans on, 80 degrees. Fortunately, there was a breeze to kind of help me out, but that smell is just putrid. If you have ever smelled wet, rotten beans, you know what I'm talking about. It is a terrible smell. Terrible, terrible smell. Never a pleasant thing to have to deal with. That's why so many farms have gone to off-site grain storage or selling it right from the field at harvest. We don't have a lot of grain storage here, and we have found any kind of grain wagons covered with tarps. It's just never good practice to store it that way long term unless you can have it tucked into a building. But then you're also inviting mice into your building or other vermin, and that's just not a good thing to do. If you do have a problem with that, try that Tomcat bait for mouse and rat, because it gets rid of voles, mice, and rats, and we've had success with everything. It's really good stuff. We even found dead red squirrels in the front yard because they got into the shop and went after it. So I've actually got to go bait that now that I think about it before dark, because the chipmunks are getting into my sunflower seeds again. So that's it for today's chores, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning, where we'll pick up where I missed today.